I swear the air shifted when she said it. Not loud, not teasing, just that quiet, deliberate smirk in her voice. It's only a break. But the way she looked at me, it wasn't casual. The office had emptied half an hour ago. Papers scattered across the long wooden table, the last streaks of sunlight stretching through the blinds. She stood by the window, her hand resting on the edge of the desk like she owned the silence. Maybe she did. Sarah always carried silence like perfume, expensive, familiar, hard to describe. I wasn't supposed to stay. I'd only come in to drop off the camera files from the morning shoot. But she'd asked, "Can you wait a second?" And my body obeyed before my mind caught up. Now it was just the two of us, her and me, in that dim, slow-breathing room. She turned then, leaning slightly on the table, her dark hair tied loosely, a few strands escaping to brush her cheek. There was something about her calm, the kind that makes you self-conscious without knowing why. I couldn't tell if she was tired or hiding something behind that half-smile. "You're quiet tonight," she said. I shrugged, pretending to check my camera. "You make it hard to find the right words." She laughed, low, unhurried, the kind that doesn't fill the room but lingers in it. "I'm not sure that's a compliment," she said, but she didn't sound offended. When she walked closer, I noticed the faint scent of jasmine. Not perfume, more like it had been there since morning, faded but still alive. She looked at the photos on the screen, her shoulder nearly brushing mine. My hand froze on the mouse. "That one," she murmured, pointing. "The light caught better there." Her finger hovered above the image, and then, maybe by accident, maybe not, her hand rested lightly against mine. It wasn't long, maybe 2 seconds. But it left a mark. She didn't pull away right away either. Just stood there, eyes still on the screen, her thumb barely moving, like she was tracing the edge of something invisible. I could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the faint ticking of her bracelet when she moved. Every sound felt too loud, too close. "I didn't know you'd still be here," I said, softer now. She tilted her head, that same half-smile again. "I thought you'd gone home." She paused, a small, unreadable pause. "Sometimes it's easier to stay than go home," she said. Something in her voice shifted, not sad, not dramatic, just honest. Like she hadn't planned to say it out loud. I wanted to ask why, but her gaze caught mine. And for a long moment, neither of us looked away. There was a quiet current between us, not spoken, not safe, but real. She finally stepped back, her hand brushing the edge of my sleeve as if to steady herself. Then, that smirk again, smaller this time, almost shy. "It's only a break," she repeated, turning toward the small studio room at the back. Her voice softened as she reached for the door handle. "Come on. You can show me the rest inside." The door opened slowly, just enough for a thin line of warm light to spill through. I hesitated, one heartbeat too long, before following her. And just as I stepped forward, she looked over her shoulder, her eyes catching mine one last time. Then she closed the door behind us. Slowly. The latch clicked, gentle, final, and in that small sound, something between us began that neither of us was ready to name. The light inside her studio was softer, warmer, as if it belonged to another time of day. A yellow lamp glowed on the counter, turning her skin almost golden. She motioned for me to sit while she poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs. "Don't expect much," she said. "I stopped trying to impress people years ago." "I don't think you have to try," I said before I could stop myself. She paused, not smiling this time, just watching me with that stillness she carried so well. Then she looked away, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. I'd only known Sarah a few months since the architecture firm started hiring me for their shoots. But I'd watched her the way people watch light through water, aware it could burn if you stayed too long. Everyone in the office treated her with quiet respect, maybe even distance. She didn't flirt, didn't linger, didn't need to. There was something untouchable about her. But when she talked to me, she softened, just slightly, like she forgot she was supposed to keep walls up. Now, sitting across from her, that invisible boundary between us felt thinner. She handed me the mug, our fingers brushing for half a second. I tried not to look like I noticed, but my pulse betrayed me. "Why photography?" she asked suddenly. I shrugged. "It's the only way I know how to stop time." She leaned back, studying me like she was deciding if that was true. "You're too young to want to stop time." The words carried something under them, regret maybe. A memory she didn't want to touch. "You sound like someone who tried," I said quietly. Her eyes flicked up. For a moment, I thought she'd deflect, change the subject. Instead, she let out a small breath. "I used to paint," she said. "Before the firm. Before everything became sensible." The way she said sensible sounded like another word for lonely. There was a silence after that, long enough for me to hear the slow ticking of the wall clock. Then she stood and walked over to the counter, pretending to rinse her cup, but her voice came softer now. "You remind me of someone I used to know. He wanted everything to mean something. Is that bad?" "It's dangerous," she said, still facing away. I stood, not sure why, maybe to fill the space, maybe to shorten it. "And yet you let me stay." She turned, the corner of her mouth lifting slightly. "For now." The air between us felt charged again, that same invisible pull. When she stepped past me to reach for a file, her shoulder brushed my chest. Neither of us moved right away. I could feel her breath, slow, measured, just beneath my chin. Then she stepped back, eyes flickering up to mine. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered. "I'm not sure how else to," I said. Her lips parted, a small, involuntary reaction, and for a second, everything stilled. The sound of rain against the window broke the silence. She glanced toward it, almost grateful for the interruption. But before she turned away completely, her hand touched my arm, soft, almost an apology, almost a promise. It lingered there, long enough to undo everything that silence had built. And then she said, barely above a whisper, "You should go before it starts pouring." I didn't. Neither did she. The rain began, slow and steady, while her hand remained on my sleeve, both of us pretending not to notice how hard it was to let go. The rain didn't stop that night. It became the kind that soaked through the city, slow, deliberate, like it wanted to wash something clean. I told myself I was just dropping off new edits, nothing more. But when I reached her office door and saw the sliver of light underneath, I knew that wasn't true. She opened the door before I knocked. "You again," she said, half smiling. "You really don't rest, do you?" "Neither do you," I said, stepping inside. Her blazer was gone, just a simple cream blouse, sleeves rolled up. She looked softer, less guarded. The kind of softness you only notice when you've seen someone hold too much tension for too long. The clock ticked. The air hummed. "I just wanted to bring these," I said, placing the photos on her desk. My voice sounded too careful. She moved closer to look, her shoulder brushing mine again, this time no accident. The faint scent of her hair, warm, clean, a hint of citrus, filled the small space between us. "You always notice what others miss," she said, her tone quieter than before. I could feel her breath as she spoke. "Maybe I just look longer," I replied. Her hand paused on the table. I saw her jaw tighten, that flicker of resistance before something gives in. Then, a sound. A knock. She froze. I stepped back instinctively, heart in my throat. A colleague's voice drifted through the door. "Sarah? You still in there?" Her eyes darted to me, then the door. "Just a second," she called too brightly. Her hand found my wrist, pulling me gently behind the tall shelf near the corner. We stood pressed close, her back against my chest, the scent of rain clinging to both of us. The door opened slightly. A man peeked in. "Didn't realize you had company," he said. "I don't," she answered quickly. "Just finishing up." He nodded, unaware. "All right. Lock up when you leave." The door closed again. We stayed still, too still, until the echo of footsteps faded. Then I felt her exhale, her back softening against me. "You can breathe now," she whispered, not turning around. I wasn't sure if I should. She laughed quietly, nervous this time, and turned just enough for her face to almost meet mine. We were inches apart. The kind of distance that dares you to cross it. Her eyes searched mine, then fell to my lips for half a second too long. I could feel every heartbeat in that silence. "This is complicated," she murmured. "I know. If anyone found out, they won't," I said. But even I didn't sound convinced. She reached up, her fingers brushing my jaw, light, uncertain. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said again. "Then stop standing this close," I whispered. For a second, either of us moved. The world outside felt far away, just rain, breath, and everything unspoken. Her thumb lingered near my cheek. I thought she'd step back. Instead, she hesitated, caught in that half-second before surrender. And then the phone on her desk buzzed. She flinched, pulling her hand back as if burned. The moment shattered. I looked away first. She turned toward the sound, pretending to read the message, though her hand trembled just slightly. Neither of us said anything. When I finally moved toward the door, she didn't stop me, but as I passed, her fingers brushed mine, deliberately, like punctuation to a sentence we weren't supposed to write. And in that touch, brief, electric, forbidden, the space between us finally disappeared, even as we both pretended it hadn't. Days passed, but the air between us didn't clear, it thickened. Every meeting, every passing glance, carried that same unfinished sentence between us. Sarah had started avoiding me, at least pretending to. Shorter messages, cooler tone, always busy. But then she'd look at me too long in meetings, or brush my arm when handing papers. Little betrayals her body made against her better judgment. And I wasn't innocent either. I found excuses, a forgotten lens, a file that needed rechecking. Anything to see her again. That evening, the office was nearly empty again. I'd come to collect my payment, but when I saw her still inside, the light spilling under her door, I knew I wasn't leaving until I heard her voice. I knocked softly. She didn't answer at first. Then, "You don't give up easily, do you?" "I don't know how," I said, stepping inside. She sat at her desk, her hair a little messy, a strand sticking to her cheek. She looked tired, beautiful in a way that didn't ask to be noticed but still was. "I told myself this should stop," she said. "Has it?" Her silence was the answer. I moved closer. She didn't move back. "You're too young to understand," she said quietly, eyes fixed on the table. "I understand enough to know I can't pretend this doesn't exist." She looked up sharply, anger, fear, something else behind her eyes. "You think this is simple? You think I haven't?" She stopped herself, pressing her lips together. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the faint trace of her perfume, the warmth of her skin. "Then tell me to leave," I said. "Say it." Her breath hitched. She didn't. Instead, she stood abruptly, trying to put space between us, but my hand brushed her wrist, just enough to stop her. She froze. "Don't," she whispered. "Someone could see. No one's here." "That's not the point." "Then what is?" She turned then, not facing me, just standing close enough that the back of her shoulder touched my chest. I could feel her trembling, even as she tried to hold herself steady. "This isn't supposed to happen," she said. I reached up, slow, unsure, and brushed that loose strand of hair away from her face. My fingers grazed her temple, the warmth of her skin electric against mine. She closed her eyes. "Just once. Say something," I whispered, my voice low near her ear. "You make me forget what's safe," she said, almost a confession, almost a surrender. Her voice cracked slightly, and that sound, small, human, real, undid me. I turned her gently to face me. She didn't resist. Her hands hovered near my shirt, not touching, just close enough to feel the heat. Our faces were inches apart. Her breath brushed against my chin. I could see the question in her eyes, the same one burning in mine. Then, just as the space between us began to disappear, the hallway lights flickered. We both froze. Footsteps, distant, but coming closer. She stepped back, breath unsteady, eyes wide. "Don't," she whispered, voice trembling. "Not here." But the word didn't sound like rejection, it sounded like a plea. The door handle rattled once, someone testing it, and in that suspended second, she looked at me with something raw, desperate, and entirely unguarded. "Tomorrow," she said. "If you still want this, tomorrow?" And before I could answer, she brushed past me, her shoulder, her scent, her silence, and left me standing in the half-dark room, every nerve still waiting for a touch that almost happened. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound, the rain, the fan, the ticking clock, replayed that single word in my head, tomorrow. When morning came, I told myself I'd keep things professional. I even believed it for a while. But by the time I walked into the office, that illusion shattered the moment I saw her. Sarah stood by the window again, same soft light, same controlled posture, but her eyes flicked toward me the second I entered, as if she'd been waiting. "Morning," I said carefully. "Morning," she echoed, her voice even, too even. There was something different in her expression, not cold, not warm, like she was holding a secret between her teeth. "I need to talk to you," she said finally. My heart caught. "Then talk." She hesitated, glancing toward the open door. "Not here." We stepped into the smaller studio, the same one where the door had closed behind us days ago. She didn't sit. Neither did I. "There's something you should know," she said. "About last night." I waited, feeling the pulse in my neck. "I wasn't the only one who stayed late," she continued. "Someone saw us. Or almost saw us." Her tone dropped, softer now. "It's already being talked about." My breath stalled. "What do you mean, who?" "It doesn't matter," she said quickly. "It just means we have to stop before what?" She looked away. Her hands were clenched around the edge of a folder. "Before it gets harder to pretend it didn't happen." Her voice cracked slightly on pretend. I stepped closer, close enough to see the tiny tremor in her jaw. "You really think anyone would believe it? Us?" She let out a bitter laugh. "You think it's the truth that ruins people? It's the whispers." Something twisted in my chest, frustration, fear, something sharper. "So that's it? You'd rather kill whatever this is because someone might have seen?" Her eyes lifted to mine then, fierce and unguarded. "Because someone already did." The silence after that was heavy. I could hear both our breathing, uneven and fast. I stepped back, running a hand through my hair. "You should have told me. I didn't know how," she whispered. "You make me forget to be careful." I turned toward her again. "Maybe careful isn't what we need." Her eyes softened, just a fraction. She looked like she wanted to move closer, but didn't trust herself. The distance between us shrank without either of us deciding it. My hand brushed her arm as I passed, not intentional, not innocent either. She closed her eyes. "Don't," she said weakly. But her body leaned in before the word finished leaving her mouth. I stopped inches away, close enough to feel the tremor of her breath. "Tell me to go." She swallowed hard. "I can't." The words hung there, quiet, dangerous, real. Her hand lifted, hesitant, shaking slightly, and rested against my chest. Not a pull, not a push. Just the weight of a decision too heavy to take back. For a moment, everything outside that room stopped, the sounds, the light, the logic. Then her phone buzzed again. She didn't look. Instead, she whispered, "If I open that door, everything changes." "Then don't," I said. Her fingers tightened against me, a breath, a heartbeat, and she whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe that's the problem." And with that, she stepped past me, slow, deliberate, toward the door. Her hand lingered on the handle. She didn't turn around. But her voice, low and steady, cut through the silence. "Tonight. No more hiding." Then she walked out, leaving the scent of her perfume, the warmth of her touch, and 1,000 unanswered questions hanging in the air. The city outside was all blur and motion, headlights on wet streets, reflections trembling in puddles. I stood outside her apartment door, heartbeat steady only because it had given up trying to slow down. She'd said tonight? Nothing more. But the word had followed me all day like a pulse I couldn't ignore. When the door opened, the light inside was dim, soft amber spilling from a single lamp. She stood there barefoot, hair loose, eyes unreadable. "I didn't think you'd actually come," she said quietly. "I didn't think I'd be able not to." A small, almost helpless smile touched her lips before fading again. She stepped aside. "Then come in." The door closed behind me, the sound of the lock gentle, final. The air was warm, faintly scented with paint and coffee and rain. She crossed the room and set down the glass she'd been holding. Her hands trembled, just barely. "This shouldn't happen," she said, turning to face me. "You know that, right?" I nodded. "Since the first day." "Then why?" "Because I don't know how to stop wanting to see you." Her breath caught. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she walked closer, each step deliberate, as if testing whether the ground would hold. "When I look at you," she whispered, "I see every mistake I promised myself I wouldn't make again. Maybe it's not a mistake." Her eyes flicked up to mine. The distance between us vanished slowly, not a rush, not a collapse, but an inevitability. I could feel her breath now. The world shrank to the space between our hands. "Say something," I murmured. "I'm scared," she said. "Not of you. Of what this makes me." Her voice cracked on the last word. My hand lifted on its own, hesitant, trembling, and brushed her hair back from her face. Her eyes closed. The warmth of her skin against my fingertips felt like truth. "You make me feel seen again," she whispered, opening her eyes. "And you make me feel like I finally exist," I said. The air between us tightened, full, charged, impossible to breathe in. Her hand rose to my chest, fingers curling lightly against the fabric of my shirt. We didn't move for a long time, just standing there, breathing the same air, too close, too aware. "If we do this," she said, "everything changes. If we don't," I whispered, "nothing will ever be the same anyway." A silence followed, deep, trembling, honest. Then she leaned forward just enough for her forehead to rest against mine. No kiss. No words. Just that quiet touch, the smallest distance between wanting and restraint. Her hand slipped to the back of my neck, mine rested against her waist. For a second, the world stopped asking for permission. Then she drew a shaky breath and stepped back, eyes glistening but steady. "This is who we are," she said softly. "Not reckless, just real." I nodded, though my throat burned. "So what now?" She smiled, tired, tender, resolved. "Now we learn how to live with knowing." And in that moment, with rain whispering against the glass and her fingers still brushing mine, I understood. The choice wasn't about crossing a line. It was about seeing it clearly, together. Morning came slow, soft, almost careful. The rain had stopped sometime in the night, leaving the world outside washed and still. Inside her apartment, the air carried the faint smell of coffee and the silence of two people who'd said everything without needing to repeat it. Sarah sat by the window, her knees drawn close, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. Sunlight brushed the edge of her face, turning every line and flaw into something quietly beautiful. I stood behind her, unsure if I should speak, afraid that words might break whatever fragile peace we'd found. "You didn't sleep either," she said finally, not looking at me. "I didn't want to miss this," I replied. She smiled faintly. "This? The part where everything feels real." Her shoulders softened. She turned then, meeting my eyes. There was no hesitation this time, just a tired sort of truth. "I thought this would ruin me," she said. "That I'd be judged, that you'd wake up one day and realize this was all a mistake." I knelt beside her chair, my hand resting over hers. "You keep waiting for someone to tell you it's wrong." But maybe it's just different. She looked down at our hands, our fingers barely touching. People don't forgive different easily. Then we don't owe them forgiveness, I said. The sunlight shifted again, brighter now, spilling across her arm, our joined hands. She let out a breath she'd been holding for years, maybe longer. You're going to leave someday, she whispered. Maybe, I said honestly. But not because I want to. She nodded, accepting the honesty instead of fighting it. I don't want promises, she said. Just something that feels true while it lasts. I leaned closer, my forehead resting lightly against hers. Then that's what you'll have. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The world outside carried on, cars starting, birds daring the post-rain chill, while we sat in that small, sunlit corner that felt like our own universe. Her hand found mine again, fingers sliding through, deliberate, certain. I used to think being seen was the same as being wanted, she said softly. But you made me feel understood. That's rarer. I smiled, small, grateful. You taught me what patience feels like. She leaned into me then, resting her head against my shoulder. I felt her exhale, the quiet tremor leaving her body as she finally stopped running from her own heart. Outside, the sunlight broke fully through the clouds, catching in her hair. I pressed a slow kiss to her forehead, not a claim, not an ending, just a thank you. We stayed like that for a long time, her fingers tangled in mine, her breath calm against my neck, the room humming with a peace that didn't ask for more. Not every love story needs fireworks. Some end quietly, with two people finally standing still in the same light, finally unafraid of being seen.